The fluorescent lights hummed their lonely song as Marcus wiped down the hospital corridor for the 1000th time that month. His calloused hands moved methodically across the linoleum, but his eyes kept drifting to room 304, where a small face pressed against the window, watching him work. She waved, and despite the exhaustion seeping into his bones, Marcus smiled back. He had no idea that this simple gesture of kindness would change both their lives forever. Marcus Henderson had never imagined his life would look like this. At 42, he was supposed to be celebrating promotions and planning family vacations, not scrubbing hospital floors at midnight while his 8-year-old son slept at his sister's house. But life had dealt him a different hand when his wife left 3 years ago, and he'd learned to play it with dignity. The janitorial job at Children's Memorial Hospital paid the bills, kept food on the table, and gave him health insurance for Tommy. That was enough. What wasn't in the job description was falling in love with the patients. But how could he not? These kids, fighting battles no child should face, still found reasons to smile. Still found wonder in the smallest things. And then there was Emily. Emily Rodriguez, 7 years old, had been in and out of the hospital for the past 6 months. Leukemia, the nurses whispered when they thought no one was listening. Marcus had first noticed her during his evening rounds, a tiny figure with a bald head and eyes too wise for her age, sitting alone in her room while other kids had visitors. Her mother worked 2 jobs just to keep up with the medical bills, the day shift nurse had mentioned, and rarely made it before visiting hours ended. So Marcus started timing his cleaning schedule around room 304. "Mr. Marcus," Emily would call out when she spotted him, her face lighting up like he was the best thing she'd seen all day. Maybe he was. At first, he just waved through the window. Then he started stopping to chat for a few minutes. Then those minutes turned into half-hour conversations about everything and nothing. She told him about her favorite books, the ones her abuela read to her before she got sick. He told her about Tommy, about their weekend adventures to the park, about the treehouse he was building in their tiny backyard. She asked questions about his mop bucket and laughed when he demonstrated his signature moves for getting stubborn stains off the floor. "You make cleaning look like dancing," she giggled one night. "That's because it is dancing," Marcus replied, spinning his mop with exaggerated flair. "You've just got to find the music in everything you do." But as the weeks passed, Emily's condition worsened. The doctors tried different treatments, each one more aggressive than the last. Some days she was too tired to talk. On those nights, Marcus would simply clean her room extra carefully, humming soft melodies his own mother used to sing to him. Sometimes Emily would drift off to sleep to the sound of his voice, a small smile on her pale face. Marcus started bringing things from home. A small music box that played, "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." One of Tommy's stuffed animals that he'd outgrown but Emily might enjoy. Books from the library with bright pictures and happy endings. He spent money he didn't really have on small gifts that might bring a moment of joy to a child who had so little. "Why do you do this?" another janitor asked him one night. "You know you're not supposed to get attached." Marcus paused, leaning on his mop. "Maybe that's exactly why I should." Emily's mother, Rosa, worked as a housekeeper at a hotel downtown and as a waitress on weekends. When they finally crossed paths one evening, she grabbed Marcus's hands with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered in accented English. "Emily talks about you all the time. You make her happy. That's all a mother can ask for." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "She makes me happy too." What he didn't tell Rosa was that he'd been calling the hospital's social services, asking about assistance programs. That he'd been putting aside $20 from each paycheck into an envelope marked, "Emily." It wasn't much, maybe enough for a few co-pays or meals, but it was something. It was what he could do. Then came the day that shattered everything. Marcus arrived for his shift to find room 304 dark and empty. His heart stopped. He found Emily's nurse in the hallway, and the look on her face told him everything he feared. "She's in the ICU," the nurse said gently. "Her body isn't responding to treatment anymore. They're doing everything they can, but..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. For the first time in 3 years, Marcus left work early. He sat in his beat-up Honda in the parking lot and cried. Not just for Emily, but for every unfair thing in a world where good people suffered and children fought for their lives while he could do nothing but push a mop and offer kind words. He went home and held Tommy extra tight that night. 3 days later, Marcus was fixing breakfast when he heard the vehicles. 6 black SUVs pulled up to his small house, completely blocking the quiet street. His heart hammered. Was this immigration? Police? Had something happened to his sister? Car doors opened, and men in expensive suits emerged. Then, from the middle vehicle, a silver-haired man stepped out, followed by Rosa, who was crying. But these weren't tears of sadness. Marcus opened his door, confusion written across his face. The silver-haired man extended his hand. Mr. Henderson, I'm Richard Rodriguez, Emily's grandfather. Marcus shook his hand, bewildered. I don't understand. Is Emily? She's going to make it, Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. A donor match came through. She had her transplant 2 days ago, and the doctors are optimistic. He paused, composing himself. Rosa told me everything you've done for my granddaughter. How you showed up every single day. How you brought her joy when we couldn't be there. How you gave from what little you had. Marcus felt dizzy. She needed someone. I couldn't just walk by. Richard smiled, but there were tears in his eyes now too. I'm a wealthy man, Mr. Henderson. I've built hotels across 3 states. But I've been estranged from my daughter for years because I was too proud, too stubborn. When Emily got sick, Rosa wouldn't let me help because of our history. She insisted on doing it alone. He looked at his daughter, regret etched in every line of his face. But Emily's stories about you, about the janitor who cared when he had no obligation to, who gave when he had nothing extra to give, those stories brought us back together. You showed us what really matters. Marcus didn't know what to say. His mind was still stuck on the most important words. Emily's going to make it. I can't repay what you've given my family, Richard continued. But I'd like to try. I'm offering you a position managing facilities at my hotels. Triple your current salary, full benefits, college fund for your son. And this, he handed Marcus an envelope. Inside was a check that made Marcus's knees weak. The medical bills, Marcus stammered. This should go too. Already taken care of, Rosa said, stepping forward. All of it. This is for you. For Tommy. For the life you sacrificed to show compassion to a stranger's child. Marcus sank onto his porch steps, overwhelmed. Tommy came running out, asking what was happening, and Marcus pulled his son close. Sometimes, Marcus said, his voice breaking, sometimes the world gives back. 6 months later, Marcus stood in Emily's hospital room one last time, but this time she was being discharged. Her hair was growing back in soft curls, and color had returned to her cheeks. She ran to him and hugged him tight. Will you still visit me? She asked. Every week, Marcus promised. Your abuelo said you're moving closer to us. Tommy can't wait to meet you. He wants to show you his treehouse. Emily beamed. Mr. Marcus, thank you for seeing me. Even when I was invisible. Marcus knelt down to her level, his eyes glistening. Sweet girl, you were never invisible. You were the brightest light in this whole hospital. As they walked out together, Marcus thought about all the nights he'd wanted to give up, all the times he'd wondered if anything he did mattered. He'd learned that kindness wasn't measured in grand gestures or wealth. It was measured in showing up. In caring when no one was watching. In finding the music in the mundane and sharing it with someone who needed to hear it. The fluorescent lights still hummed in the hospital corridors, but now they sounded less like loneliness and more like possibility. Because sometimes, when you give everything you have to someone who has nothing, the whole world shifts a little bit closer to what it should be. And that, Marcus had learned, was worth more than 6 SUVs full of riches could ever hold.